When we look at reconciliation, I always say we need to be involved, but we have to be a full partner. Things aren't going to change unless we can sit down together and say, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the direction we're going to move in.
There's a lot of questions out there, perhaps maybe from some of our neighboring peoples. But it's amazing how people look at you be neighbors for a quarter of a century and they don't know that there was this little reserve here or that little reserve over there.
One thing that we noticed growing up is that we always noticed that all the native people stayed on one side of the river and all the white people stayed on the other side of the river. And that was just an accepted way of life where we didn't cross that bridge.
But we wanted people to know our history so we could work together. We can't work together if we don't understand each other. That's what kept coming out.
Many of us elders do keep a lot of teachings with us and to learn to let everything go by helping many people, young and old, and to recognize the value of this world we're in.
With the presentation of our workshop, we've done over 10,000 participants now, and it's still growing some more. And so that was the journey for me, and so every time that I am able to go and to be able to bring me to a place, if it's meant to be that I share my story, it's meant to be.
What I really believe the value and the power of these workshops is that they create transformative experiences for participants.
And that's one thing I've always been so very fortunate and so happy about today is when in our Cultural Connections group we have Robert and we have Ron and my auntie Dorothy. They know all the traditional songs, they know the language.
They almost take them back to that village life and what living in community and in First Nations, Indigenous communities were like before colonization. And so they really set the tone and it's so experiential.
Part of living in a village is that we take responsibility for every person's actions in our family, because that really brings a sense of belonging, which is a big part of being a part of a village.
The child being in the center of the village, surrounded by people, there's something just simply about that physical experience that calls on your whole humanity, your whole being to engage differently.
I remember being happy. I remember having a role in the family.
Early in the summer, the spring salmon were coming, and I was always down the river spearing them.
We all felt included and helpful. We felt like we had to help.
And so then when they move into the second phase of colonization and the very systematic and intentional process of cultural genocide, really, they really feel it because they were part of creating that village before. And then they experience what it would feel like to have your children severed from that comfort place, severed from that sense of community.
You know, I always think about my grandmothers going to their place, and I was always taken, I was always embraced, I was always nourished, and always looked after. In this big red building, you're just taken by the arm. It felt so dark and so cold, and I cried and I cried.
People learn more when they hear people say it, when they're sitting right there in front of you. This is my story. It makes it more real. So the more real we became, I was surprised at how many people were coming.
So we're weaving a different story now than the story that we got as a child. And to be able to tell our children the stories in that basket, they get held by that basket that hold us together. And they connect us from our past to our future.